Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. The hour having arrived to consider a special order of business of executive nominations. I look to the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to postpone the special order of business until 5 p.m.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Second. Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome several new honorary pages as they've arrived. As guest of the senior senator from the 6th, we have Bobby Napier. Please stand as your name is called. As guest of the senator from Harrison, we have Mitchell Hawkins. As guest of the senator from Tucker, Kensington McGill. And as guest of the senator from Mercer, Ireland Garrett and Stella Dunn. If they would all please rise and the Senate give them a warm welcome. Are there further introductions? Senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor today to be able to recognize somebody that has been one of my very capable team. Isabel Kennison is my clerk, and with her today is Miss Emily, her daughter, sitting in the North Gallery. If they would please rise, and if the Senate would extend a very warm welcome to them.
Senior Senator, Senator has another introduction?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Mr. President. Additionally, sitting in the North Gallery is somebody that has served the Senate Government Organization Committee very capably over the course of the last 60 days. He's been our intern, but he's been a right hand to me, being able to research a number of issues that are before us. Nathan is a WVU student, member of the WVU marching band. If Nathan Burdett, if you would please rise, and if the Senate would please extend a very warm welcome.
Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senator from Mercer, our page today, Bobby Napper's mother is in the North Gallery. Her name is Amy Napper, and Senate, please join me and make her welcome. Stand up.
Senator from Mercer County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our two pages, as you just introduced, took their ACTs this morning, so that's why they're coming in late. And I think Stella Dunn's father, Dad Daniel, is here. If he's here, if he'd stand, I'd like for the Senate to make him welcome.
Further introductions. Clerk has the conference committee report.
Copies are available in the chamber automation system for the conference committee report for engrossed Senate Bill 241, permitting county court clerks scan certain documents in electronic form.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to move to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk has a standing committee report.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 424, Supplemental Appropriation to Civil Contingent Fund, and has amended same, and Senate Bill 435, Supplemental Appropriation to the State Department of Education and Vocational Division, and has amended same, and reports the same back with recommendation that they each do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received. The Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bills be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will read the bills a first time.
Senate Bill 424, Supplemental Appropriation to Civil Contingent Fund, first reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the constitutional rule requiring a bill to be read on 3 different days be suspended and that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its adoption.
Junior Senator from 17th moves that the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 several days be suspended and a bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Or excuse me, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, and not voting more than 4/5 of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule suspended. Clerk will read the bill a second time.
Senate Bill 424, Supplemental Appropriation to Civil Contingent Fund, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Finance moved to amend the bill.
Senior Senator from the 15th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee amendment for Senate Bill 424 makes one change to the bill. It changes the amount appropriated to the Governor's Civil Contingent Fund from $28 million to $10 million. Mr. President, I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor of the Finance Committee amendment explained by the Senior Senator for the 15th will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have. Declare committee amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed Senate Bill 424, Supplemental Appropriation to Civil Contingent Fund, third reading of the bill.
Question for Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 424 is a supplemental appropriating $10 million out of the Treasury and the State Fund into the Governor's Office Civil Contingency Fund. This fund can be used for a variety of purposes. The Governor's offices, in testimony to the committee, assured members that the monies in this fund are used for reimbursement of expenses that are incurred while dealing with natural disasters during a state of emergency declared by either the President or the Governor. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk will read the next bill a first time.
Senate Bill 435, Supplemental Appropriation to the State Department of Education and Vocational Division, first reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Junior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the constitutional rule requiring a bill to be read on 3 different days be suspended, that the bill be read a second and third time and placed upon its passage.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the constitutional rule requiring a bill be read on 3 several days be suspended, that the bill be read a second and third time placed upon its passage. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than 4/5 of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the constitutional rule suspended. Clerk will read the bill a second time.
Senate Bill 435, Supplemental Appropriation to State Department of Education and Vocational Division, second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Finance moved to amend the bill.
Senior Senator from the 15th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee strike and insert amendment for Senate Bill 435 makes a number of changes to the bill. The first one is it corrects a technical error in the bill. The second is it changes the amount appropriated to the State Department of Education, Communities and Schools appropriation from $5 million to $3 million. And finally, it changes the amount appropriated to the State Board of Education, the Vocational Division, Jim's Dream, from $10 million to $9.7 million. This brings the total appropriation in Senate Bill 424 to $12.7 million. Mr. President, I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor of the amendment as explained by the Senior Senator from the 15th will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare committee amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed. Advance to third reading. Clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed Senate Bill 435, Supplemental Appropriation to State Department of Education and Vocational Division. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 435 is a supplemental bill that appropriates $12.7 million out of the Treasury and the State Fund and into two separate funds. $3 million would be appropriated to the State Board of Education, Communities, and Schools. This three-year pilot expansion will forge community partnerships that bring resources into schools and help remove barriers to students' learning. $9.7 million would be appropriated to the State Board of Education's Vocational Division for Jim's Dream. The money will fund adult career centers throughout the state, needed training individuals for jobs in mining, highways, welding, masonry, plumbing, construction trades, and hospitality. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
The junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk has a communication from the House.
The clerk of the House announced that the House amended the bill in title as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 522, creating special road repair fund.
Message be received. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate refuse the House amendments to Senate Bill 522 and request the House recede therefrom.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate refuse the House amendments to Senate Bill 522 and request the House to recede therefrom. Is there discussion? Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill set up a special road fund to make improvements to secondary roads. When it passed the Senate, it had $110 million in funding over the next 2 years from the general revenue. The House retained the special fund but rendered it useless by removing any funding source. I move we recede.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor of the senator's motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2807, creating an additional modification to the West Virginia adjusted gross income of shareholders of S corporations engaged in banking. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of House Bill 2801, excuse me, it's a typo here. The purpose of House Bill 2807 is to provide reducing modification to the West Virginia adjusted gross income of a shareholder of a subchapter S corporation and members of a limited liability company engaged in banking business in this state. The modification is similar to the modification that presently exists in the Code for Corporate Net Taxable Income applicable to C corporations, which includes banks organized as C corporations. The reducing modification is not allowed by an individual to the extent that the adjustment has already been done on the S corporation or limited liability company level. The bill also provides for appointment rules for S corporations and limited liability companies engaged in business as a financial organization both within and outside the state of West Virginia. The bill defines the term special gross receipts factor. It notes that such factor shall not include receipts from certain governmental obligations and investments and loans, and primarily secured by residential mortgages and secured by liens or security agreements on residential property. The reducing modification is retroactive and effective for tax years beginning January 1st, 2018. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a Rule 43 regarding this particular issue. I am the owner of a sub-S corporation, and so I'm just concerned about voting on this with that particular thought.
Thank you. And in response to your inquiry, as I understand your situation, you are a member of a class and therefore will be required to vote. Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on Banking and Insurance move to amend the title of the bill.
The question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 2968, adding remote service unit to the definition of customer bank communications terminals. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's try this again. House Bill 2968. The purpose of this bill is to permit the installation and operation of what are known as remote service units, RSUs, by adding remote service units to the definition of customer bank communication terminal. A remote service unit is defined as an automated facility operated by a customer of a bank that conducts banking functions such as receiving deposits, paying withdrawals, or lending money, and includes an unmanned or automated teller machine, an automated loan machine, and an automated device for receiving deposits. A remote service unit may be equipped with a telephone or video device that allows contact with bank personnel. This bill also requires operators of remote service units to maintain a physical location in the state of West Virginia. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request for a ruling of the chair under Rule 43 of the Rules of the Senate as to whether or not I should be permitted to vote or excused from voting on this due to my service as a director of a community bank.
Thank you. In your response to your inquiry, and as I understand your situation, you are a member of a class and therefore will be required to vote. Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on the Judiciary move to amend the title of the bill.
Question for the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2947 relating generally to telemedicine prescription practice requirements and exceptions. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee substitute for House Bill 2947. The purpose of this bill basically permits telemedicine prescription of Schedule II drugs only in the hospital setting. The bill came from the House to include ICUs, regular inpatient floors, and the emergency room. Health Committee removed the emergency room, so the bill as it stands before us today is for only ICUs and inpatients. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 3131 relating to providing salary adjustments to employees of the Department of Health and Human Resources. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 3131 is a bill that allows the DHR to adjust in their own pay rates as well as their employment requirements. As the bill came over, it was the entire DHHR. Right now, the bill stands. It permits the DHHR to develop a special merit-based system for pay rates and employment requirements only for physicians, physician specialists, nurses, nursing directors, health service workers, health service assistants, and other employees who assist in the direct provision of medical care to patients at either a state-operated acute care, state-operated long-term care facility, psychiatric care facility, clinical and/or other medical facilities. The special-based merit system for payment and employment requirements shall be approved by the State Personnel Board. The pay rates and the employment requirements shall be put into effect no sooner than January 1st, 2020, and no later than July 1st, 2020. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Maroney moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2674, creating a student loan repayment program for a mental health provider. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2674 creates two programs to assist health professionals with higher education costs. The first program is administered by the Higher Education Policy Commissioner. It's a loan that is available for up to 3 years beginning in January 1st, 2020 for mental health providers who provide counseling services in underserved areas. The mental health providers are entitled to receive up to $30,000 to be dispensed in a program awarded of up to $10,000 each year in exchange for completing 1 year of counseling in an underserved area. A participant may not receive more than 3 years. A participant must direct each award towards repayment of their educational loans. The second portion of this bill creates a program for primary care physicians practicing in West Virginia. The program creates a non-resident medical student partial tuition waiver as a means of recruiting practicing physicians to underserved areas and to primary care and practitioner shortage areas in West Virginia. The program is administered by the Vice Chancellor for Health Sciences in cooperation with all 3 state medical schools. 2 non-state resident medical students from each medical school within the state are selected annually to participate in the program. Each student is charged the state resident tuition rate for each academic year and has the cost differential between the resident and non-resident rates waived by the institution at which he or she is enrolled. For each academic year he or she participates in the program, he or she shall commit to render services for 1 calendar year as a medical doctor or doctor of osteopathy in this state in a medically underserved area or in a primary care or specialty practice field in which there's a shortage of physicians. This bill also provides for rulemaking. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent not voting, more than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on Health and Human Resources moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2770, Fairness and Cost Sharing Calculation Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2770 is a bill that requires an insurer to include cost-sharing amounts paid by the insured on behalf of the insured by another person when calculating the insured's contribution of a deductible. The bill also requires a pharmacy benefits manager to include any cost-sharing amounts paid by the insured on or behalf of the insured by another person. This bill also provides for rulemaking by the insurance commissioner. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has title amendment.
Senator Maroney moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2933, modifying the criminal penalties imposed on a parent, guardian, or custodian for child abuse resulting in injury. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2933 relates to criminal penalties for child abuse or neglect resulting in injury. The penalty has been increased for child abuse causing bodily injury from 1 to 5 years in prison to 2 to 10 years in prison. The penalty has increased for child abuse causing serious bodily injury from 2 to 10 years in prison to 5 to 15 years in prison. The penalty has also increased for a person with a prior conviction from a fine of $100 to $1,000 and 6 months in jail to not more than $3,000 in fines and a 3 to 15 year in prison sentence, or both. For 2 more prior convictions, the penalty has also increased from a fine of $1,000 to $3,000 and 1 to 3 years in confinement to a fine of not more than $3,000 and 5 to 15 years in prison, or both. Also, the penalty for child neglect that creates a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury has been reduced from $1,000 to $3,000 to $100 to $1,000, and from imprisonment for 1 to 5 years to confinement in jail for not more than 2 years or both. The penalty has also increased for a person with a prior conviction from a fine of $100 to $1,000 and 6 months in jail to not more than a fine of not more than $3,000 and 3 to 5 years in prison, or both. For 2 more prior convictions, the penalty is also increased from a fine of $1,000 to $3,000 and 1 to 3 years confinement to not more than $3,000 of a fine and 5 to 15 years in prison, or both. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Trump moved to amend the title of the bill.
The question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action to Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2540, prohibiting the waste of game animals, game birds, or game fish. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2540 provides that it is unlawful for any person to cause, through carelessness, neglect, or otherwise, to let any edible portion of any big game or game fish to go to waste needlessly. Edible portion with respect to big game means either the meat of the front quarters to the knee, the meat of the hind quarters to the hook, or the meat along the backbone between the front quarters and hind quarters. However, the edible portion of a wild turkey is the meat of the breast only. Edible portion with respect to game fish means the fillet meat from the gill plate to the tail fin. Edible portion does not include bones, sinew, viscera, meat from the head or neck, meat that has been damaged or rendered inedible by method of taking, or meat that is reasonably lost as a result of close trimming of bones. Further, it is unlawful for any person to take any big game, detach or remove from the carcass only the head, hide, antlers, tusks, paws, claws, gallbladder, teeth, beards, or spurs, and leave the carcass to waste. If a person is unable to locate the carcass of any lawfully taken big game prior to its spoilage, it is not considered waste to detach or remove from the carcass the head, hide, antlers, tusks, paws, claws, gallbladder, teeth, beards, or spurs. If one of these items is removed or detached, it will count towards the daily seasonal bag and possession limit. Any person found guilty of waste of big game is subject to 1, a fine of $500 to $2,500 and or 10 days to 100 days in jail. 2, suspension of the person's hunting and fishing license for a period of 5 years. And 3, all applicable forfeiture and replacement provisions in Chapter 20, Article 2, Section 5A of the Code. Any person found guilty of waste of game fish is subject to 1, a fine of $100 to $500 and or 10 to 100 days in jail. 2, suspension of the person's hunting or fishing license for a period of 2 years. And 3, all applicable forfeiture and replacement provisions in Chapter 20, Article 2, Section 5A of the Code. I urge passage of the bill.
There's further discussion. Senator from Harrison County, Secret. Senator from Cabell County.
Will the senator yield?
Senator yield. Senator does yield.
Yes. So here's my question. If I'm texting and I'm driving through the woods and I hit a deer and I'm negligent in killing that deer, what do I have to do to avoid the 10 days in jail? Do I have to just go ahead? I'm sorry.
So you're asking?
In other words, I'm negligent. I kill the deer. I'm out in the woods. I can't leave the carcass there because it's a game animal, and I want to know how I avoid the 10 days in jail. What do I have to do?
This only deals when you're hunting. If you were to go out to hunt, not if you.
Is that in the statute? I looked at it earlier. Are you sure?
So, as counsel has explained, that this is it's an anti-poaching bill. So it deals
I understand that
hunting
part.
situations.
But I didn't see any qualifiers about motor vehicles in there. I may have overlooked it.
Yeah, if you want to term your driving as, because there are the qualifiers here of carelessness, neglect.
Negligently driving my car. I'm texting, so that meets that part. I kill the game animal, and I'm in the woods. I'm out on a mountaintop somewhere. What do I affirmatively have to do to avoid the 10 days in jail? Because it's a minimum of 10 days in jail. Am I right, Senator?
So it's 10 to 100 days. You are correct.
So what do I do to avoid that 10 days in jail?
So I guess it would come down to, is the animal, because you've hit it with your car, is it even able to be, we'll say...
do I have to perform an autopsy? What do I have to do?
I wouldn't think that you would be required to perform an autopsy on the animal.
Okay. But really, this is nothing, there's no qualification, is there, on this for, that I have to be hunting? I just have to negligently kill the game animal, right?
It's always been my understanding that this applied to hunting situations.
Where do you find that in the bill?
Where it's located in the code in Chapter 20, and then the article.
I'm sorry. I heard that, but that's not a qualification.
It's in the wildlife resources part of the code. Which
all right, so you say, okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is further discussion? Further discussion. Not. Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 22 yeas, 12 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on the Judiciary moved to amend the title.
Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Withdraw the committee amendment.
Senator from Brooke County requests unanimous consent to withdraw the title amendment. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Clerk has another title amendment.
Senator Trump moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. The senator from Upshur seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to return the second order of business for purposes of introduction.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you. Seated in the North Gallery, we have our former delegate, Jeff Eldridge, and his wife, Stacy, and Maddie and Jillian. If they would please stand up and the Senate give them a warm welcome.
Further introductions? Further bills on third reading.
Engrossed House Bill 3139 relating to funding of the Public Employees Health Insurance Program. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill creates the PEIA Rainy Day Fund. The fund would consist of an income from investment monies and all other sums available for deposit in the account, including future legislative appropriations. The fund can be used to reduce or prevent benefit cuts, reduce premium increases, or a combination of thereof. The Secretary may consult with the Investment Management Board or the Board of Treasury and Investments and is granted rulemaking authority to implement the provisions. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question for the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has title amendment.
Senator Blair moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question for the Senate is adoption of title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than two-thirds of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 2665, supplemental appropriation for PEIA rainy day fee. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a supplemental requested by the governor that would appropriate $105 million into the newly created PEIA Rainy Day Fund that we just voted on here. This fund was established with the passage of House Bill 3139. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. And this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none on this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2479, Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question for the Senate is shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill you've all been waiting for, House Bill 2479, the Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure Act. The purpose of House Bill 2479 is to improve the insurance commissioner's surveillance of the financial conditions of insurers. The committee substitute requires insurers writing more than $500 million or insurance groups writing more than $1 billion in annual premiums to maintain an internal audit function providing independent, objective, and reasonable assurance to the insurers or insurance group's audit committee regarding the insurer's governance, risk management, and internal controls. In order to ensure objectivity, the internal audit function must be organizationally independent. The internal audit function will not defer ultimate judgment on audit matters to others and shall appoint an individual to head the internal audit function who will have direct and unrestricted access to the board of directors. The head of the internal audit function must report to the audit committee regularly, but no less than annually on the periodic audit plan, factors that may adversely impact the internal audit's function's independence or effectiveness, material findings from completed audits, and the appropriateness of corrective actions implemented by management as a result of audit findings. The Corporate Governance Annual Disclosure Act institutes a requirement that an insurer or insured group must annually provide a confidential disclosure regarding its corporate governance practices. This law does not prescribe new corporate governance standards, but rather requires tailored, confidential reporting to ensure appropriate policies and procedures of insurers' boards of directors and internal oversight are in place and effective. The Model Act and regulation together require an insurer, group, or insurers to provide a detailed corporate governance annual disclosure, allowing for more frequent review, consideration, and assessment of corporate governance practices. Currently, most of this information is only subject to review during periodic on-site examinations. The insurer or group of insurers may choose to provide information on governance activities that occur at the ultimate controlling parent level, an intermediate holding company level, and or the individual legal entity level based on its determination of the level at which decisions are made, oversight is provided, and governance accountability is assessed in relation to the insurance activities of the insurer. This legislation is needed for the state of West Virginia to remain accredited with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. This is a model act by the NAIC that the NAIC will require for states to maintain accreditation by January 1, 2020. 27 states have already adopted this model act and it is pending in 6 more state legislatures so far this year, including West Virginia. All states should have it adopted by 2020. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Question for the Senate. This shall the bill pass. Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
Engrossed House Bill 2856 relating to the administration of the operating fund of the Securities Division of the Auditor's Office. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is shall the bill pass. Is there discussion? The senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2856 amends a single section of code relating to the administration of the operating fund of the State Auditor's Securities Division by changing the calculation of the amount of money from that account that is transferred to the General Revenue Fund annually. Currently, at the end of any fiscal year, any amount in the account that is in excess of 50% of the prior fiscal year's appropriation is to be transferred to the General Revenue Fund. The bill would change that any amount in excess of 20% of the gross revenue from the Special Operating Fund operations. The bill was requested by the State Auditor and is intended to make the change in how the excess is determined permanent. The change was made during the 2017 regular session, but was inadvertently made ineffective or made effective only for 1 year. I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Not. all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Senator from Tucker County. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2945 relating to vendors paying a single annual fee for a permit issued by a local health department. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2945 is a bill that will permit an in-state vendor that's issued a temporary food service permit for a time period of less than annual by a local health department for selling food to be able to have a valid permit for the entire calendar year, regardless of the length of time for which the first permit is issued, and regardless of the number of festivals or activities for which the permit was required. It's also valid for counties that border the vendor's county of residence, or for 25 miles, whichever is greater. This does, by the way, exclude or it only applies to foods that do not require time or temperature control for safety to limit pathologic microorganisms, growth, or toxic formations. The bill also provides that no health department may charge a permit fee to any in-state vendor that has received a temporary food service permit, but may place a condition and limitations to assure compliance with health department rules and standards for the type of permit being issued. Each vendor must provide notice to the local health department of at least 14 days prior to the state, city, county, or event or other activity. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2490, preventing, proposing, or enforcing rules that prevent recreational water facilities from making necessary upgrades. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the swimming pool bill. It's House Bill 2490. This bill provides that the DHHR Secretary does not have the authority to review a repair or modernization of equipment of a public pool as long as the activity does not change the scope of the facility or its current use, and such activity does not exceed $25,000 in planned costs. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 5th.
The senator yield.
Does the senator yield? The senator does yield.
So I've gotten some complaints from Cabell County about this bill because of the Department of Health and overseeing swimming pools and things like this. What has changed in this now that would give them any satisfaction on this?
Okay, well, this is the bill we're voting on today is the same bill that was introduced. We made no changes in the committee. During the health committee, this bill was treading water, the entire health committee. We had this bill on the agenda a few times. But during the health committee, we did have testimony from DHHR Assistant Secretary Samples, who said he was neutral on the bill. I actually spoke with Secretary Crouch yesterday, just in passing. I just brought it up, and he expressed the same. He actually said, his words were, it's a good bill. And we had testimony from that the local health departments would still be in play and assure some of those safety standards.
So the health departments will be still be involved in the regulation of these, but it has to exceed 25,000?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, that's correct. The local health departments will still inspect and still be involved. This just keeps pools that want to get better and improve with less than a $25,000 investment it allows them to be able to bypass the DHHR approval.
Okay, and the liability will still be on whoever owns the pool if there's any problems with this?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Is there further discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to speak in favor of this bill. This allows some pools to basically get grandfathered in, and as everyone I'm sure here knows, public pools probably need all the help they can get. This may prevent them from having a final nail in their coffin and having to shut down due to increased regulations due to improvements. So I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea, those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yea, 0 nay, 0 absent not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk has a message from the House. Oh, the senator from Harrison seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to return to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator recognized for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome one of our late arriving pages and his mother who brought him down here. Mitchell Hawkins was brought down here by Tina Hawkins. Please make her feel welcome. Tina, where you at? There she is, way up here on top.
Further introductions. Clerk has a communication from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced that the House rejected the Senate amendments and asked the Senate to recede therefrom as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 405, increasing limit on additional expenses incurred in preparing notice list for redemption.
Message be received. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate refuse to recede from its amendments to Senate Bill 405 and a conference committee be appointed.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate refuse to recede from the amendments to Senate Bill 405 and that the chair be authorized to appoint a committee of conferences. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare motion adopted. On behalf of the Senate, the chair appoints the senator from Nicholas County, the senator from Preston County, and the senior senator from the 17th. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
The Clerk of the House announced that the House refused to recede from its amendments and appointed a conference committee of delegates Capito, Foster, and Lovejoy as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 487 relating to admissibility of health care staffing requirements and litigation.
Message be received. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the chair appoint conferees to Senate Bill 487.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the chair be authorized to appoint conferees to Senate Bill 487. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. On behalf of the Senate, the chair appoints the junior senator from the 17th, the senator from Nicholas County, and the senator from Cabell County. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Do you want three?
Clerk has another communication from the House.
The House refused to recede from its amendments and appointed conferees Delegates Harshbarger, Phillips, and Hartman as it relates to Senate Bill 596, adjusting voluntary contribution amounts on certain DMV forms.
Message be received. A junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the chair appoint conferees to Senate Bill 596.
Junior senator from the 17th moves the chair be authorized to appoint conferees to Senate Bill 596. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. On behalf of the Senate, the chair appoints the senator from Brooke County, the senator from Marshall County, and the senior senator from the 8th. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Junior senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the 6th order of business.
Junior senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent to proceed to the 6th order of business. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Introduction of bills.
There are none.
Resolutions. Where'd Palumbo?
It's going to rules.
Oh, yeah, it's going.
Consideration to rules, so it doesn't lie over that.
Clerk has an announcement from the chair. Clerk has an the chair has an announcement. With regards to the conferees on Senate Bill 596, I will appoint the senator from Preston and the senator from Marshall will be removed. Clerk, resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 63 by Senators Palumbo, Plymel, Tacubo, Stallings, Beach, and Jeffries, naming the U.S. Army Private First Class Earl Russell Cobb, Specialist 4, Carl Bradford Goodson, and Staff Sergeant George T. Saunders, Jr., Memorial Bridge.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration and sent to referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 64 by Senators Palumbo, Plymel, Jeffries, Stallings, Beach, and Tacubo, naming the U.S. Marine Corps Corporal Larry Scott Kennedy, Memorial Bridge.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration and be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Resolution 76 by Senators Baldwin, Jeffries, Stallings, Beach, and Hamilton, urging EPA and other environmental and health agencies assist residents of Minden, West Virginia relocate due to long-term exposure to certain chemicals.
The senator from Greenbrier County. Senator from Greenbrier County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 76, urging EPA and other environmental and health agencies assist residents of Minden, West Virginia relocate due to long-term exposure to certain chemicals.
Question before the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Further resolutions?
Senate Resolution 77 by Senators Palumbo, Plymel, Jeffries, Beach, Hardesty, Stallings, Hamilton, Tacubo, and Swope, urging President Donald J. Trump direct FEMA complete work to replace Clendenin Elementary and Herbert Hoover High School.
The senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 77, urging President Donald J. Trump direct FEMA complete work to replace Clendenin Elementary and Herbert Hoover High School.
Question before the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real briefly, this is the issue I spoke on earlier in the week, just encouraging the President to get involved and assist these schools that have been lingering around and delayed for 3 years. I urge its adoption.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Clerk will declare the resolution adopted. Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to introduce a resolution from the floor.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk has a resolution at the desk.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 65 by Senator Maynard requesting the Joint Committee on Government and Finance study the proposal of allowing retailers to pay sales tax for the consumer as a method of advertisement.
Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was a...
Senior senator from the 6th. I ask unanimous consent to the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The question now is on adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? Senior senator from the 6th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This was an originating study resolution that left our Economic Development Committee and somehow got lost in the shuffle. And to make sure this makes it to the finish line, I just wanted to introduce it from the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Further resolutions? Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to introduce a resolution from the floor.
With regard to Senate Concurrent Resolution 65, clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to introduce a resolution from the floor.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk has a resolution.
Senate Resolution 78 by Senators Seipolt, Clements, Swope, Beach, Boley, Boso, Jeffries, Mann, Plymel, and Roberts, urging Congress to allow vehicles traveling on interstate highways in West Virginia to have the same maximum gross vehicle weight and axle configuration as currently permissible for vehicles traveling on U.S. routes in West Virginia.
Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, the committee reference dispensed with, and the resolution be put upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 78, urging Congress to allow vehicles traveling on interstate highways in West Virginia to have the same maximum gross vehicle weight and axle configuration as currently permissible for vehicles traveling on U.S. routes in West Virginia.
Question for the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President.
This is basically the third time you've seen this resolution. We can't seem to get any movement over in the House on a concurrent resolution. So we've decided the best avenue to take is to go ahead and introduce it as a Senate resolution. And I hope that we can get everybody on board. I want to see, I'd love to see a 34-0 vote on this resolution. And let's get these heavy trucks off of our back roads and put them on the interstate where it's much safer than they are on the back roads. I urge adoption of the resolution.
Question for a Senate. Is there further discussion? Further discussion. Question for a Senate is adopts a resolution. Roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting, more than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the resolution adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from Morgan County for a conference committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your conferees representing the West Virginia Senate on the disagreeing votes with the House of Delegates on the committee substitute for Senate Bill 295 met with our counterparts from the House, and after a full and free conference, we agreed upon and do recommend to both respective houses a compromise position on the bill. The conference committee recommended that as to the piece regarding court security officers and carrying authority, the conference committee adopted the Senate position but added language at the request of the House. Both houses agreed that the provisions of that section would not become effective until July 1 of 2020. With respect to the obstructing statute 6157, what we agreed upon was that we would have court security officers added, correctional officers added, the state fire marshal, full-time deputy or assistant fire marshals added, and we added some language about, in subsection D, allowing a person, and this would apply really to the correctional officers, it already defines flight from a person being arrested. We've added language, lawful arrest or lawfully detain a person. And so that's part of that offense now. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions about the report of the conference committee. And if there are none, Mr. President, then I would move the adoption of the conference committee report.
Is there further discussion? Is there discussion? Not. Question before the Senate is adoption of the conference committee report. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the conference committee report adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results on this question being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move we recess until 5 o'clock.
Junior senator from the 7th. Are there announcements? Junior senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tentatively, we have set a conference committee on your Senate Bill 405. The conferees will be scheduled to meet in the President's conference room at 6:30 p.m. this evening.
Further announcements? Not. Question for the Senate is, shall the Senate stand in recess until 5 p.m. this evening? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do. I declare the Senate in recess until 5 p.m. this evening. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Recognize the senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your conference committee on Senate Bill 596, which consists of myself, the senator from Preston County, and the senior senator from the 8th, will meet in the back of the Senate chamber at 7 o'clock.
Junior Senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to revise a time, your committee on Senate Bill 405, which consists of myself, the senator from Preston, and the senior senator from the 17th, will be meeting at 7:30, not 6:30. We're waiting on the House to make the announcement. So,
Junior senator from 17th.
And that will be Senate President's conference room.
Senator from Wetzel County.
Mr. President, make an announcement that the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure will meet at the rear of the chamber immediately upon recess or adjournment.
Junior senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the third order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Reports, communications from the House, communications from the Executive.
I have a letter dated March 9th, 2019, addressed to the Honorable Donna Boley, Senate Confirmations Chair. Dear Madam Chairwoman, I am respectfully withdrawing the reappointment of Executive Nomination Number 9 as contained in Senate Executive Message Number 3, Regular Session 2019. As always, if I may be of further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Jim Justice, Governor.
Message be received. Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Confirmations has had under consideration Senate Executive Message Number 3, dated March 6, 2019, and reports the same back with the recommendation that the Senate do advise and consent to all of the nominations listed above. Respectfully submitted, Donna J. Boley, Chair.
The report will be received. The hour having arrived for consideration of executive nominations, the Chair recognizes the senator from Pleasants County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that all nominations referred to in the foregoing report from the Committee on Confirmations be confirmed.
Senator from Pleasants moves that all nominations referred to in the foregoing report from the Committee on Confirmations be confirmed. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare that all nominations referred to in the foregoing report from the Committee on Confirmations are confirmed. There being no further nominations, I declare the special order of business closed. Senator from Boone County seeks recognition.
Thank you, Mr. President. We request unanimous consent to the return to the second order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed. Introduction of guest.
In the South Gallery, we have some special teachers from Boone County. On behalf of the Senator from Logan, we have Heather Ritter, Ariel Price, and Amber Brown. If they would stand and the Senate make them welcome.
Further introductions, Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the rear, we have my assistant, who has been my assistant this entire session, Brenda Clint, and Darren Johnson, who has been my intern in education, and both have been an incredible help. And I just want to thank them now publicly for everything. This has been a long session for the Education Committee. Darren and Brenda, let the Senate make you feel welcome.
Further introductions, Senator from Brooke County.
Mr. President, in the North Gallery is Ms. Tori Mullins. She is the lovely fiancée of our esteemed Majority Leader, the Junior Senator from the 17th. If she could please rise and the Senate make her feel welcome.
Senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to, at this time, to acknowledge our intern that we've had working on roads and transportation and also on banking and insurance with our attorney, Nick Blevins. And Nick has done a wonderful job trying to keep me straight on these you-know-what road and bridge namings. So, Nick, would you please stand and let the Senate give you a big thank you.
Senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery here to the south of us is a good friend of ours and a colleague from the House of Delegates. If you'll please rise, Dr. Marshall Long, former member of the West Virginia House of Delegates.
Further introductions, Senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the President's Gallery, honored to have a friend of the senior senator from the 3rd and myself, and Vienna City Councilman Roger Conley, and with his boy Sean, if they would stand in the Senate, make them feel welcome.
Are there further introductions? Further introductions. Clerk has a message from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced that the House amended and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 30, eliminating tax on annuity considerations collected by life insurer.
Message be received. Junior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendment to Senate Bill 30.
Junior Senator from 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 30. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bill would eliminate a 1% tax on consideration paid to a life insurer for an annuity contract beginning January 1, 2021. The House delayed the elimination of the tax by 1 year from 2020 to 2021 to avoid budgetary concerns. I move adoption.
Is further discussion? Not. Question for the Senate is the adoption of the motion as offered by the Senator from Junior Senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent not voting, more than a majority of those present voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
The House amended and passed Senate Bill 36, allowing adjustment of gross income for calculating personal income liability for certain retirees.
The message be received. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 36.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 36. Is there discussion? The Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill allows a retiree to claim a tax credit for the difference between the maximum amount of their pension if the pension has been terminated and the amount covered by a guarantor if the maximum amount of the guarantee is lower than they would have received from their actual pension. The change was to the effective date to start, tax credit effective January 1 of 2020. I urge we concur.
Is there further discussion? The Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to rise and say that we should go ahead and concur with the or adopt the motion of the senior or junior senator from the 17th, but the only reason I'm doing so is because we've already adopted the budget, and so we can't change anything that's in this bill because the budget's already been drawn up. And what the House did is delayed for a year a small tax credit that these retirees, former employees of Weird and Steel, should be getting this year, should be able to qualify for this year, and they delayed that for a year. And there are only a few of them. And I can't help but wonder what the reason was for what they did. But I do know that there are going to be several folks in the 1st Senatorial District with myself and the Senator from Ohio that are going to be disappointed because while this is going into code, what has been the process this entire time and what we've talked about in getting this tax credit back into the code is now going to be delayed for another year. It's a very small amount of money that we're discussing here. So I'm going to go ahead and move that we accept the motion of the junior senator from the 17th, but I wanted to voice my disappointment in the House's actions on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. Question for Senate is adoption of motion is offered by the junior senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2019. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the bill be made effective from passage and request, on July 1, 2019, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question there being 32 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2019. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk has another message from the House.
The clerk of the House announced that the House amended the bill and title as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 103, relating generally to public defender services.
Message be received. The junior senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 103.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in House amendments to Senate Bill 103. Is there discussion? Junior senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this bill is to transfer initial authority to review, approve, modify, or refuse panel attorney vouchers from circuit courts to public defender services. The House amendment adds the provisions of committee substitute for Senate Bill 361 in public defender services, removed rainy day borrowing authority, and maintains the rest of CS 103. I move we concur.
Is there further discussion? Not. Question for Senate is adoption of the motion is offered by the junior senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The junior senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2019. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from 17th moves that the bill be made effective July 1, 2019, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House. Clerk, declare the bill effective July 1, 2019. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
The House amended the bill and title as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 147, shifting funding from Landfill Closure Assistance Fund to local solid waste authorities.
Message be received. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur to House amendments to Senate Bill 147.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 147. Is there discussion? Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the comm sub for Senate Bill 147 is to adjust fees charged by county solid waste authorities. Current law provides that county or regional solid waste authorities impose a 50-cent fee per ton upon the disposal or solid waste in the county. Additionally, a DEP solid waste assessment fee of $3.50 per ton is assessed for disposal at a solid waste disposal facility. This introduced version of the bill would raise the county solid waste assessment fee to $1.50 and lower the DEP assessment fee to $2.50, keeping the full amount static. The Senate amended the bill to leave DEP assessment at the current $3.50 level, but increase the county solid waste authority to $1.50 level, resulting in a total increase per ton of $1. I urge we concur.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the junior senator from the 17th yield?
So does the senator yield? The senator does yield.
I will.
When that bill came through the Senate a couple weeks ago, I had a floor amendment on there to exempt the haulers, or to exempt the monofills from the 3 tipping fees. Is that still in there, or do they take it out?
It's my understanding from council that that part came out.
And we're going to just accept that?
For council, the House didn't feel that that continued with the original intent of the bill, and so that's why they pulled it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the motion as offered by the junior senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Senator from Mercer County. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 24 yeas, 9 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action and send it to the House.
The House amended the bill and title as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 152 relating generally to criminal offense expungement.
Message be received. A junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 152.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 152. Is there discussion? Junior senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the bill is to allow for criminal record expungement rather than just reducing felonies to a misdemeanor, and to allow access to petition the process after 5 years instead of 10 years. The House amendment does away with preliminary expungements, sets waiting periods at 2 years for misdemeanors and 5 years for felony. It adds provisions which can reduce waiting for completion of drug treatment or jobs programs, if applicable, adds to the list of offenses for which expungement is not available, and does clean up for internal consistency. I urge we concur.
Is there further discussion? The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, this was early on in the session. I was a lone no vote on this bill when it came through, and I didn't speak at the time, and I've regretted it ever since. So I wanted to explain why I opposed it then and why I still oppose the bill now. One of the things that this bill really fails to consider is that there's a 60% relapse when somebody has been addicted to drugs at some point past that. What this bill does is it says that if you have been convicted of a crime and you served your time, so many years later you can apply for expungement. So when you go to interview for a job, you no longer have to tell an employer that you do have a criminal history. And most of these crimes that are going to be taken up in this expungement are probably going to be drug related. And here's what happens right now when the natural progression from crime all the way through to the end result of what this bill does. What happens right now in West Virginia is that when somebody commits one of these crimes related to drugs, they're charged, and when it goes into for the grand jury part of it, the charges are reduced. So you'll see something, and actually I have experience with one of these that's happened. Had somebody who pled down a daytime burglary to a petty larceny, and it was related to drugs. So that was a 1 to 10 year sentence. They were able to plea it down to a petty larceny, which was a maximum of 1 year. And then they were sentenced to 6 months, served 4. So you have somebody who, what they really had done, and the purpose for this too is the reason it was all pled down is they couldn't afford jail bill. And since they couldn't afford the jail bill, they let out somebody who should have been sentenced probably for the 10 years. And the reason I say for the 10 years is because shortly after they committed a similar crime over in Ohio, and now they're 10 years in prison. So this has taken somebody who could have had a fairly serious crime to start with, but because of what the court process bringing the thing down to make it look minor, it's no longer minor, and then they're going to completely expunge it. And if it's related to drugs, at some point, there's a 60% chance that that felon, possibly, is going to relapse. So now if you're the employer, and you've got a few people that are equally qualified, and as you're looking at these people and decide, you know, you pick the one you like, but I can't see, as an employer, or any other employer, can't see that that person has a drug addiction history and a history of disregarding the safety of someone else for their own pleasure, benefit, what be it. They disregarded the safety of another citizen. So now you bring that person into employ, not knowing that history. Something triggers that relapse. Maybe that person's driving a truck full of lumber. Maybe they're going into somebody's home to take care of somebody's mother. But in that relapse circumstance, what happens is the public is put at risk. They cross the center line, they take out a family. That employer, by giving responsibility to somebody who never should have had it, and the reason is because as a state we've said you can't see the risk, puts the public at risk, has a family killed. Aside now, that's bad enough, but now what happens is all the downstream stuff that also happens to who could have been a small business in West Virginia that could, one, harm their reputation because they've got somebody who's under the influence who kills a family. And then you also have the litigation side of it. Then you also have the increase that jumps up in the insurance, not just to that employer, because we just exposed every business in West Virginia to this risk, so all the insurance goes up. That person's also probably on the employer's health insurance at that time. And when they go back to rehab, they're going to go on the employer's health insurance. What do you think that's going to do to health insurance rates in West Virginia? This bill has great intention. I understand its intention. And I actually offered a bill that helps offset some of the liabilities that really didn't see committee. And I'll probably introduce it again next year and the year after if it doesn't get through. But I would urge a no vote on this bill because the butterfly effect that it has on the families that are the innocent bystanders in West Virginia, and on the businesses, and on every one of your health insurance premiums, and if you own a business, your liability premiums, they're going up with this bill. I urge rejection of it.
Just to the members, to remind you, we are voting on the motion, so Is there further discussion regarding the motion? The question is on the motion to concur as offered by the Junior Senator from the 17th. Is further discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Mr. President, and I'll be brief. I think this is a great bill. This is a good work done by the Senate and on judiciary. It made its way through the House. One of the reasons why I was an early supporter of this, not only do I believe in second chances, but I've had a number of small businesses come to me during the campaign wanting this type of expungement. So maybe I have a different experience than some folks here, but my general impression of the business community is they want something like this. So again, it goes to giving an opportunity to folks for a second chance. We have low workforce participation in this state anyway. This will give people an opportunity, not to mention the court process that's involved in this bill is stringent to the extent that an individual has to petition themselves, and then a court decides whether or not to expunge a record. And my experience with courts is they're just not handing that out as candy. So this is a good opportunity for good folks who are trying to redeem their lives for making mistakes in the past. I asked the Senate to adopt and pass Senate Bill 152. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? The Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand and speak in favor of this as well. I'm someone who has sent people to prison for their entire life for trafficking in drugs. I've sent hundreds of people to jail and to prison for drug trafficking. But I speak in favor of this because the only way we're going to find our way out of the problem that we're in right now, perhaps the worst drug problem in the entire country, is if we give people a second chance. And as a young prosecutor, when I was 25 years old, I thought everybody should go away. And I was wrong. I was mistaken. I have grown. I've evolved. I've matured. And I realize now that the only way we're going to find our way out of this problem is if we give people a second chance. There are employers in this state, one of them right in Ohio County, Wheeling, West Virginia, that have compassionate hiring programs. Ziegenfelders, it's the Popsicle Company. They have a compassionate hiring program. They bring in people, they give them a second chance, and they have had tremendous success with that program. These are people that are incredibly loyal and grateful to be given that opportunity. And once they're employed, once they're earning a paycheck, there's money that's going to pay child support. They're paying taxes. They're productive citizens. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that people should get a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chance. At some point in time, someone cannot be rehabilitated. I'm not that naive. But if we don't give people second chances, give them the opportunity to get their lives back on track, we're going to continue to be number one in drug overdoses. We're going to continue to be number one in all of these horrible categories. Something like this is a way that West Virginia can begin to climb out of the hole that we find ourselves in. So I strongly urge passage of this bill. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion. The Senator from, Junior Senator from the 4th.
Would the Junior Senator from the 1st yield?
Senator yields. Senator does yield.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So would you support a bill that limited the liability of an employer both on the business side of it and on the health insurance side, should they give this second chance that you're talking about?
Are you familiar with the federal bonding program?
I realize that you can get bonding for it. I'm asking, would you support a bill that said, so these people who got expunged, now there's still a registry of their criminal history. There's still a registry of their criminal history. It's just it can't be accessed by anybody unless they were to commit another crime, the way I understand this. So if that's the case, and when an employer had an employee who, probably by relapse is when most of this stuff would happen, that exposed West Virginians to possibly fatal risk, when that happens under the watch of an employer, should that employer be exempt from any liability because of the state hiding that liability from them when they go to employ that person?
I'd be happy to look at your bill, but I think you're overreacting. I think you're overestimating this problem. I think if you, as a small business owner, were to give someone a second chance, you would realize how incredibly loyal that person would be to you, how grateful they would be to you. and you would find that you would have even better employees that you have right now. You just need to open your mind, and you need to bring people in like that. But would I consider your legislation? Yeah, let me take a look at it. But I don't think we should create a registry for people like you have proposed, because that completely defeats the purpose of what we're talking about right now. That's a backward step for what we're trying to do.
I would disagree, and I would speak actually to the bill now.
Senators recognized to speak for the first time to the bill.
Yeah. So I do have experience with this. So when you say that I would have a closed mind, I've given people this second chance knowing the risk, knowing that I can put them in a situation that's not putting either the business or people at risk for their past. I have people in my employ like that right now. But the thing is I know the risk I'm taking as an employer. What this bill does is it hides that risk. The state hides that risk. And that's absurd. I'm all about job creation, believe me. This doesn't create jobs. This creates risk for employers that create jobs. So, with that, again, I oppose this bill.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that this is a great bill. It's a bill. It's a jobs bill. Let me start with that. It's a jobs bill for people that have made a wrong decision in their life and regret what they have done. The number of people that I've talked with that have done some things that they just totally regret what they did are just dying for that second chance. About a month ago, I got a phone call from a gentleman as I was leaving from here, and he says, "Where does that bill stand at?" He said, "My son, who is, I believe if I remember right, just 33 years old, been clean from his criminal penalty that he had for over 10, I think he said about 10 years now. And he said numerous opportunities of finding jobs that will support him, his family. And those jobs, those good paying jobs, two of them that he mentioned to me was when they looked on his record and they seen that felony conviction on there, he was not able to obtain those jobs. And he said, I just hope and I pray that this state wakes up and sees that, yes, they are bad people out there. And I think the system, the way it is written, will take care of that. Remember, they're for non-violent felonies. And there's a number of things that they have to go through and the way they have to petition because it can be denied. So I just asked, man, let's have some compassion for these people that are wanting a second chance to be a part of our society, to be a part of our community. I think it's a good bill, and I ask for passage.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of passage of this legislation. It was considered and worked very hard and carefully in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I want to compliment all the members of that committee for their work in crafting this legislation, as well as the original sponsors. I want to just address a couple points so the members are reminded this is not an easy path for someone to obtain an expungement. First of all, there are entire classes of offenses for which people will never be eligible for expungement. Violent crimes, felonies, and misdemeanors are afforded no path to expungement under this legislation. It's limited to nonviolent crimes. All sexual offenses are excluded. There is no path to expungement for anybody for the sexual offenses under this bill. The procedures are rigorous. For any felony, it requires at least a minimum of 5 years following the completion of all sentence, whatever a sentence was for the underlying offense, before anyone can even ask. The decisions would not be made in a vacuum. Under this bill, when a person petitions for an expungement, the court is required to notify the prosecuting attorney that handled the original case, the state police, the municipal police. If other courts were involved, those are required to be notified as well. They are afforded, all of them, in this bill, an opportunity to express any opposition. If a petitioner for an expungement has had subsequent criminal conduct of any kind, he or she is not going to be eligible to receive the expungement, and a judge is not going to grant it to him. I will not stand here on the floor of the Senate and say there's no risk. That would be less than candid. There will be people that have relapses, but do we wipe out the opportunity for an entire population of people who have worked hard to rehabilitate themselves, to become reintegrated in our society, to become productive members in our workforce? Do we just say no to all of them forever? I think we should not. I think this bill provides a reasonable and narrow path to expungements for people who deserve it, who've earned it. It requires work to earn it. I urge passage of the bill.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill? The senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill because I go back to my days in the House when I was first put on the Legislative Oversight Committee on the jails and prisons. And we went into the jails and prisons. And I always thought to myself, am I going to have to stand with my back to the wall all the time for fear of something happening? And I ran into a gentleman in Moundsville in the prison up there. This was just shortly after they'd closed that old penitentiary up there. There was a warden up there. His name was Eisenhower. And he told me, he said, you know, after being here all these years, one of the things I found out is that 80 to 90% of the people that are in here are good people. They just made a mistake. And they've paid their debt to society. They've gone in and spent their time within the walls of that penitentiary. Now they're out, and we're going to make them continue to pay for that mistake. And that's not right. And the chances are they may end up back there again because they can't find work. Mr. President, I support this legislation.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill? Are there other members desiring to speak to the bill before I recognize junior senator from the I recognize the senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I've been sitting here pondering and listening to the conversation about this particular piece of legislation, two words have been going through my mind: mercy and grace. The people that we're talking about didn't receive mercy, but took the punishment that was given to them by the courts in the course of making a bad decision. But now they need somebody to show them something that we talk about often but rarely practice in our society, and that's grace. This is a point where we have an opportunity to show a little grace to those who need it most so that they can provide for their families, they can be productive members of society. I recognize, having worked in the construction industry and working with people, sometimes you're going to make some decisions that you're going to hire somebody, you're going to show a little grace and put them into a workplace, and they're going to mess up again. And I hold them accountable. And I've done that. And when I hold them accountable, they appreciate it. But when I encourage them, what I've found too is that those particular workers become some of the most loyal, dedicated, and hardworking, but most importantly, honest because they come to me and tell me when other people are messing up. I encourage passage of this particular bill. Thank you.
Other members desiring to speak to the bill, Senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm inspired by the words of the senator from Nicholas. During my 12 years of Catholic education, it seemed like there was always a dynamic, and it depended on which nun was doing the teaching that year. So on the one hand, we had Yahweh, and we had the bolt of lightning, and basically to me that meant fear, okay? But then we had the New Testament. And to me, those were the teachings, obviously, of Christ. Forgiveness. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So I see this vote maybe in that light. Are we going to be judgmental? Or are we going to grant some forgiveness here? Urge passage.
The junior senator from the 4th seeks recognition.
I'm just going to request a ruling on the 43 rule in the Senate because I am an employer that's going to be taking the risk.
In response to your inquiry, as I understand your situation, I consider you a member of a class and therefore will be required to vote. The question now is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine, ascertain the results. On this question there being 32 yeas, 1 nay, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Clerk has a conference committee report.
Copies are available on the chamber automation system for the conference committee report relating to engrossed Senate Bill 317, authorizing 3 or more adjacent counties for multi-county trail network authority.
Report will be received. Do one more, boy. Clerk has a message from the House.
The House amended and passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 291 relating generally to survivor benefits for emergency response providers.
Message be received. A junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 291.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in House amendments to Senate Bill 291. Is there discussion? Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the bill is to provide that Division of Forestry personnel who die during an emergency wildfire response are eligible to receive the statutory survivor benefits in the same capacity as EMS and other first responders. The House amendments were purely technical. In language for consistency, the House added the word agency after the word law enforcement in 2 locations. I urge we concur.
Is there further discussion? Not. All those in favor of the senator's motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. Question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior senator from the 17th.
Dear Mr. President, I move the bill be made effective from July 1, 2019. Request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective July 1, 2019 and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2019. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
The House amended the bill and title as it relates to committee substitute for Senate Bill 345 relating to fire service equipment and training funds for VFDs.
Message be received. A junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendment to Senate Bill 345.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 345. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The House made minor stylistic and technical changes, added a single section of an amended code to the bill, which is identical to the Senate Bill 671. The House amended the title of the bill to reflect inclusion of the additional section of code in the bill. I urge we concur.
Is further discussion? Not. All those in favor of the Senator's motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
You ready to do the